Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I am not your Australian host, Kane Pittman. Justin Garcia filling in for Kane and joined by the founder of Brew Hoop and the longtime host of the podcast, Frank Madden. Frank, we were talking before. We basically knew maybe not the result, but what we saw for most of this game is what I think most Bucks fans anticipated coming into this of a week off, just starting the playoffs in general. We've seen this team not get off to the best of starts. And this is a Miami Heat team that has gone through a lot of postseason games now in their final few games of the regular season and the play-in tournament. But still, the loss not what you anticipated to be recapping after game one. We'll certainly get to that, but I think where we have to start is a game where the takeaways are the Heat hit a lot of threes and Giannis leaves with an injury.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, the Bucks underwhelming in a game one is like, tale as old as time. So I think if the Bucks, even the Bucks losing game one is almost like, yeah, of course, it's just something we've seen so many times from this team, kind of playing down to game one competition. Sometimes it feels like maybe they don't have the right game plan, and again, they end up having to be put into sort of like a counter punching mindset before they really sort of figure things out and kind of let the series get felt out. But obviously, the tenor of everything changes significantly. Like losing a game one, you don't really worry about that much if it's still full power Giannis led Milwaukee Bucks basketball. But with the uncertainty around Giannis, hits the deck, right on his back, behind tailbone, whatever it was, with Kevin Love, predictably as Kevin was wont to do, sliding under him, trying to draw a charge. Coldly ironic, given Giannis was giving Kevin Love credit for, sort of like speaking up about mental health issues for NBA players. Unfortunately, Kevin Love causing some very real physical health problems for Giannis in this game with blocking call that sent Giannis to the ground. He shoots the free throws, then he leaves the game, then he comes back, then he leaves the game again. And I think all we heard, I don't know if you've heard anything else, Justin. You are in the arena, which I don't feel good for you having to be stuck in that arena all day on a day like this. But it seems like the was, well, X-rays were negative. That's why they were able to kind of put him back out there. They're able to do that very quickly in arena. But obviously, there's more scans, diagnostics to be done, and with a lower back injury, which I believe they're calling it a lower back contusion or bruise or something.
Yeah.
You worry probably more about like what an MRI or kind of secondary examination may indicate. So again, you hope that sort of like a worst case scenario has been dodged, but really going to need Giannis's Wolverine healing factor to come in because again, Bucks are going to play better than they did today, even without Giannis, I would expect. But you just don't want to be in a spot where you're having to play game two down 0-1 without, your MVP and needing to win a basketball game. And again, like even if they lose game two, it's like series isn't over, but man, you're really putting yourself behind the eight ball if you do something like that. We've seen the Bucks obviously come back from down 2-0, having lost on the road twice against Brooklyn and Phoenix back in the 2021 playoffs. But again, those were different scenarios. Those were starting on the road. Those were Giannis was playing. And so I think obviously by far your biggest concern coming out of this is, not that like the Heat are going to shoot 60% from three every game or that you're going to shoot 24% from three every game. That should even out somewhat. Famous last words, maybe thinking of that Boston series, but you're not going to necessarily have some of the things go wrong in game two and onward that you saw tonight. But if Giannis is either missing some portion of the series or is physically just not himself and can't play at the level that we expect of him, then the whole series takes on a different complexion. And I don't know, it's for me to say like, what how much percentages swung here in terms of, just having lost game one. I think if the Bucks healthy, they'd still be the overwhelming favorites to win this series. But with Giannis being this question mark, it just kind of, I think, reminds you how fickle this whole thing. Unfortunately, we saw it last year with Khris Middleton getting hurt. Yes, they could beat the Bulls, but they were just didn't have the firepower against Boston. And obviously, goes without saying, it's one thing to lose Khris as good as he is, and he was great today, in fact, but to lose Giannis would be an entirely different story. And so it just feels like everything else is going to be secondary to whatever the medical report comes up for with Giannis. But this is where the upside of a super spaced out series comes in. They have 2 off days before they come back on Wednesday, and then another 2 off days before shifting to Miami for game 3. And it seems like they're going to need all of that time off.
Yeah, and we should mention too, today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. We mentioned the Giannis injury, and look, even with this loss, the Bucks are still going to be, I would assume, favorites. We don't know the status of Giannis. It just means maybe this series goes longer than you would have hoped for, and it's another reminder of why the best laid plans, and you can't point to, hey, second round, here's our path. I mean, look what happened 2 years ago. Nobody anticipated it would be the Atlanta Hawks you were playing in the conference finals. Who knows what could happen with this? So it's a reminder of you got to take things in the old coach speak, one game at a time. Bud's comments after the game were basically, there was a hint of optimism, but who knows? We never know, because clarity is not how this team operates, especially with injury reports. But it was Giannis's MRIs were clear. It's going to be a matter of how he feels tomorrow, and I would assume how he feels Tuesday and Wednesday. So it did sound like it was good news. But when I was talking about it with Dave Kane afterwards, I think, too, the assumption was the only way we'll have clarity on Giannis for the rest of this series if it's bad news. When you go back to game 2 against the Bulls last year, when Bud said after the game, in a rare moment of clarity, it was an MCL sprain for Khris Middleton. As soon as he said that, you knew this is not good, and he's probably out for this series, next series. Who knows when he'll be back? So I guess not giving the bad news or getting bad news was somewhat good news, but with the injuries, and we'll get to the offense and everything the Bucks do need to clean up here, the Tyler Hero injury. So it happened basically right in front of us. You could see as it happened, something was up with Tyler Hero, who remained on the ground for a significant amount of time. Then he tried to leave and tried to go to the locker room, but was told by an official he couldn't be subbed out. He had to get back on the floor. And when that happened, you could see he was trying to take himself out of the play, where he was crouched down, holding the wrist. He had to shoot the ball with what we've learned is a broken hand. And that, again, kind of summed up this game, where you were basically playing 5-on-4 with Tyler Hero one-handed out there, and the Heat scored and prevented you from scoring on your trip down the floor.
Yeah, you were in the arena, Justin. I was watching the game with a couple of friends here, and we both thought the ball went in off the Hero shot. I think it just grazed the front rim or something.
It almost hit the side of the backboard.
Yeah, it was really weird visually on TV. It almost looked like it went in, but then it went like straight down under the basket, and befitting the Heat actually finally miss a 3-point shot, and they get the rebound and the putback. It was kind of a summary of the day for the Bucks. But yeah, it was really weird because it didn't seem like there was much of any contact when Hero kind of swiped at Grayson Allen, trying to get to the ball in the backcourt after it had been knocked back there, and he basically Grayson kind of matadored him.
Yeah,
I still don't know if he actually caught Grayson or if it was or what it was, but obviously that's a big loss for a Miami team whose offense has been, I mean, like their offense today was like a 128 offensive rating. I mean, it was crazy, you know, like they've been one of the worst 3-point shooting teams all year. And then all of a sudden tonight they come out, hit 60% from 3, put up like a 128 offensive rating, and look like, you know, the idealized version of the team that had the best record in the East last year. So, I mean, obviously that's a big loss for the Heat. Duncan Robinson, we saw started the second half, which was pretty random. Obviously, we saw Duncan Robinson as a starter against the Bucks 2 years ago, and he really didn't do anything except he hit that huge 3 at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah.
When the Bucks, I thought, really just totally blundered their way out of the end of that period. They had it within, I believe, what was it, 5 or 6?
6, I think they got it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think it was like an 8-0 run or something like that, or 6-0 run, 8-0 run in the last like 50 seconds or something. And poor clock management. Khris Middleton, as good as he was today, he had a bad pass for a turnover on the Bucks' last possession, and then fittingly, Miami works the ball into the corner for Robinson. He hits a three, and that just felt like, again, Bucks got it within, again, they had, I think it was at 8 or 9 points in the fourth quarter. Javon Carter had that chance to dribble up into his, I hesitate to call it a trademark pull up three in transition because it's been pretty shaky for the last few months. So I don't know that we want him thinking that it's his trademark at this point, but it seemed like he had Khris Middleton wide open for a potential layup. He takes the pull up three, could have cut it to, again, I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 at that point. But instead he misses it, and Bucks again just felt like a game, as much as the Giannis injury kind of liner, as much as I think the defense deserves a lot of discussion. I think we need to get to the defense, and just it just felt like the tactics, just nothing really like worked today in particular. But they still had chances in the fourth quarter to kind of like get into this game and make Miami sweat a little bit. But whenever they did that, it felt like either they got a stop or two, and then they just had bad offense or just weren't patient. I think that Carter three was followed by Khris with like a kind of a rushed pull up three where I think he may have been thinking he could draw a foul. He misses that one, and then Drew, no pass possession, kind of attacks the basket, kind of leaned in, looked like he might have been thinking he could draw a foul on a mid-range shot. He misses that, and it was just like, 3 possessions where literally there's not a single pass. You miss 3 jump shots, and then Miami, every time it felt like, Miami would get it. It would go down to 8 or 9 points. It's like, oh, maybe there's an opening here. And then Bucks, bad offense, lack of patience, kind of didn't really value possessions. And then Miami came back and, could always hit the, like, Jimmy or Bam hit a short mid-ranger, or they work it around 3 or whatever, which that was sort of how it ultimately was sealed in the last few minutes, as the Bucks again to 8 points in the last couple minutes on a Wes Matthews 3. And then again, just could not get over the hump. It was a hump game for the Bucks, and they just could never get over it. So I don't know. It was one of those. I mean, I think Miami was clearly the better team today, but I don't know if it's a silver lining that the Bucks kind of did have some chances, but it just felt like every time they made a run, they made that run in the second quarter to get it to 43-42. Spo takes a timeout. They immediately kind of counterpunch. Just felt like one of those games that the Bucks just could not kind of get, they couldn't over their own lack of discipline, own lack of execution on both ends. And even though Miami at times did give them chances.
Miami gave them chances. Turnovers were a big reason why Miami gave them chances. But to your point, the Bucks got it to 1 in the second quarter, 3 in the third quarter. They started to chip away in the fourth, but it was really around the 9-minute mark where you got the assumption of, I think it was 8 at that time. If you're going to do something, it's got to be now, because every time the Bucks have gone on a run, the Heat answered. When it was 1, the Heat immediately pushed it up to double figures. When it was 3, they did the same thing. So you knew 9 minutes might seem like a lot of time, but your time is very much limited. And you mentioned the defense. So we've spent a decent amount of time talking about the Bucks shooting and how, look, maybe the percentages aren't going to be quite that much. I did see this was the largest gap in three-point shooting percentage in NBA history, with the Heat shooting 60% and what the Bucks did today. But unfortunately, that has been the norm for the Bucks, where they won the championship shooting 32%. So I don't think you should anticipate sub 20, but we can't necessarily anticipate things are going to consistently swing upward. The defense, on the other hand, is the area where we have had that consistency and have had those expectations. And I know a few of us pointed out the last month or so of the regular season, we did see the defense start to show some cracks, and there was more three-point attempts given up, a higher shooting percentage by the opponents. And I think they were 18th in defensive rating for the last month or so of the regular season. So you were a little curious to see which version of this Bucks team are they. We saw from the onset a lot of similarities to how they defended this Heat team 2 years ago. The one biggest difference was how you defended Jimmy Butler, and in many ways, it felt like what we saw in the bubble. Not so much Giannis not on him, but there was one stretch of the game to me that really stood out too, where you didn't have Drew Holiday on the floor, you didn't have Wesley Matthews, you didn't have Jay Crowder, and you were basically asking Khris Middleton to be the guy that defended Jimmy Butler, which did not result well for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think when you lose Khris or you lose Giannis, I feel like where you really feel it is on the offensive end, or on the defensive end, excuse me, because there was an interesting kind of chess match going on where Brooke, it felt like Brooke could only really play when Bam was on the floor. And look, I mean, they're not going to play Bam 20 minutes, right? I mean, Spo knows how good Bam is. He was ultimately solid tonight. He missed a bunch of kind of short shots early and then kind of got more of a rhythm as the game went on. But I mean, look, Bam's going to play a lot, regardless. But it felt like where the Bucks were really in the danger zone was whenever they went small. We saw Kevin Love had a really big impact on this game with his 3-point shooting. With I think he took one charge on Giannis. I think he took another charge shortly thereafter that, and of course he injured Giannis. So huge impact from Kevin Love. Obviously, I feel like Kevin Love was doing this for the Cavs as well over the last year or two. When the talk of him getting released started coming up, I was like, wait a minute, why would the Cavs release Kevin Love? And and I was like, well, he's not really playing much. And I was like, man, it feels like with especially with the fact that you can pair him with Mobley or Jared Allen, it feels like, I mean, you should be able to put enough defense around Kevin Love in Cleveland that you can get use out of him. But obviously a huge pickup for Miami, just in the sense that they started the year and went past the trade deadline with basically no power forwards. They start this super small lineup with Jimmy as the power forward. And I think the thing that really there's a kind of a long list of things I think defensively that really, I think if you're a Bucks fan, kind of stick in your craw. I think, let's start with the Jimmy question. Look, Drew Holiday, all-world defender, of course, putting Drew on Jimmy. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's a, individually, that's a pretty reasonable option to go with. And yeah, I mean, Miami doesn't have a ton of, it's not like they've got a ton of other great offensive wings that you have to worry about. But Drew picks up 2 fouls in this game pretty early. He had to go to the bench early with foul trouble. And it just felt like, they were going over screens. And as much as Drew is, able to navigate screens very well, giving Jimmy kind of a runway to go at Brooke just doesn't feel like the best way to play. And, you've got Giannis sitting in the corner on Gabe Vincent, which, Giannis is going to, if Giannis is going to roam off Gabe Vincent, then Gabe Vincent is going to shoot threes and probably make them, because he always does that against the Bucks. So it just felt like a bizarre choice to me, and I guess it was mainly because there wasn't anybody else good enough for Drew to guard. I guess that was the logic with it. Seeing that, Jimmy is probably like the prototype wing for Giannis to guard, because he doesn't want to shoot threes. So you can't just put Giannis into those high pick and rolls where he can't get over screens well and force switches. So I would have loved to see them just come out and say, all right, Giannis, you're going to guard jumpers and kill you that way. That's okay. Beats getting to the rim, drawing fouls, and shooting, 5 foot, 6 foot jumpers, pump faking to get layups and things like that. But obviously that was not the direction Bud went. I feel like 2 years ago we saw the recipe work pretty damn well. So that was probably the starting point for, feeling like, man, I just don't know that the game plan made sense in that regard. And then I think just other stuff too. I mean, we saw a zone from the Bucks in the second quarter. I don't know that the game got out of hand when they went to that zone. I'd have to check what the numbers were, but man, it felt like, they only ran it for a few minutes, but every time they just got the ball immediately to Jimmy at the foul line. He just had a runway to attack Brooke. Brooke blocked one of Jimmy's shots, but man, that's putting a ton of pressure. And it just feels like, okay, this is why the Bucks don't play zone, right? It just felt like when have we seen this zone from them? That's just not their game. And then just kind of some other stuff. I mean, when Joe Ingles came to the game in the first quarter, he was matched up against Jimmy Butler. Why? Yeah. Why are you putting Joe Ingles in a position where he has to defend Jimmy Butler? Like, Bud's had this weird thing where he puts good offensive players on Joe, and it's almost like they're trying to bait them into taking mid-range jumpers or something. But I think he had an and one against Joe, and it's just not the place you want to be. So I don't know, it just felt like a really frustrating, first quarter in particular, especially when you had Giannis, the fact that they weren't really using Giannis in a way that I think would make sense. And then just some of the stuff that we've seen kind of plague the Bucks all year. I mean, the Bucks were 4th in the league in terms of defensive transition numbers in a good way. They were, if you use cleaning glasses, defensive, points added per 100 possessions in transition.
Yeah, I would recommend not looking at it after this game.
Yeah. I mean, if you did, you would see that they were allowed Miami to be +8, which is unreal. Not unreal. It's 86th percentile, and the Bucks were -4 points per 100 added through transition, which is 7th percentile. So transition was an absolute nightmare for the Bucks in this game. maybe not surprising when Giannis is hurt, but even when Giannis was out there, and we saw Giannis miss a mid-range jumper, and then Jimmy just got behind the defense. Giannis started thinking he was guarding a guy in the wing. Jimmy gets open for a dunk. So we've seen the Bucks, especially with the amount of offensive rebounding focus that they have. They are susceptible to getting beaten in transition at points, and I think we saw that with Jimmy in particular leaking out and taking advantage of them. So I don't know, just a lot that defensively I think needs to be sorted out. And probably the biggest concern, especially with Giannis being his question mark, is when Brook is on the bench. How do you defend a Heat team with Jimmy in ISO against, even if it's Wes Matthews or Jay Crowder, who, Jay Crowder was MIA today. I mean, looked bad when he played and didn't play much. They're going to need a lot more from him. But if Brook's not in the game, you don't have any rim protection behind you, right? There's no Giannis to clean anything up. Brook Bobby Portis, who actually had a good defensive game, I would say, but he's not going to be the guy to stop that. And so I think just losing Giannis really just sort of shines a light on the fact that the Bucks don't have a very versatile defensive group without him. They rely on him so much to make those small lineups work. And, a lot of the guys that they have, whether it's, Joe Ingles, in particular, Bobby, Grayson Allen to an extent. I mean, a lot of these role players are not out there for their defense, and their defense and the value they provide when they, in the sense they do provide value defensively, is kind of like premise on that you do have either Brook or Giannis out there at all times. So, so I think to me that's the biggest question: is what do you do when Bam is not out there and Brook is out there against defending Kevin Love, or is on the bench and you're really small? Hopefully the answer is Giannis and he's back in game 2. But if he's not, man, they have very few answers there. And I just thought the point of attack defense on Jimmy was pretty poor. We saw pretty much everybody, including Drew, kind of get blown by at various points, and just felt like everybody was a step slow. So yeah, I think as much as the offense was ugly with 3-point shooting, I think the prescription and where this team is going to focus in terms of the film room, I think has got to start on the defensive end.
Yeah, I do want to get to the defense and a couple of those names that you mentioned as well, but do have to mention prize picks here tonight. I would take Mikal Bridges to score more than 26.5 points. I would take more than 7.5 rebounds from Joel Embiid. James Harden to have more than 6.5 assists. Steph Curry is going to make 3.5 or more 3-pointers made in game 2 against the Kings as well. With prize picks, you're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. You pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than the prize picks projection, that is what you're looking for, and you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Simple to play. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's with our friends at Prize Picks. Jay Crowder, you mentioned, I agree, he did not look great, and there was a couple of possessions as well where Jay Crowder was the man that made a bad foul that led to an and one. I think one was Gabe Vincent on the baseline that he just looked a step slow. And 11 minutes tonight, just under 12 minutes from Jay Crowder. Wesley Matthews did play a lot more, and a lot more than we had seen in the regular season. He was pretty vocal about that down the stretch too, that he understood the plan. It just wasn't exactly the type of season that he wanted with his playing time. But we did see Wes. That's not a surprise with Jimmy Butler. He is a good matchup on Jimmy Butler, and we saw one instance where Wesley Matthews' defense led to a transition for the Bucks. But with Jay Crowder, what do you take away from this game? Because again, the minutes, I think we started to see more leading up to the playoffs, and a lot of us were anticipating, okay, we'll see more of Jay Crowder, especially defensively, how he looked late in the season. But for Jay Crowder to look just okay at best and at times bad defensively against this Miami Heat team, that doesn't give you a lot of confidence for some of the perimeter opponents if you get past Miami that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been probably on the more skeptical side of Jay in terms of his ability to defend, like, wings and guys that really want to attack, the rim and quicker players. Now, I don't know if Jimmy exactly fits that bill. Jimmy's kind of like a unique kind of animal in terms of how he plays. But I mean, Jay Crowder played with Jimmy Butler, practiced with Jimmy Butler. Like, again, you would think he might know something. I mean, they were college teammates, right? We saw the shot during the game of them at Marquette together. So I I think there was probably a lot of expectation that he would at least be part of the gang tackling approach against Jimmy Butler. And I mean, if Giannis goes down, I mean, there's two guys that you would think suddenly become much more important parts of the rotation, and it's Bobby Portis and Jay Crowder. Bobby Portis, let's give him some credit. I mentioned kind of the
Yeah.
defense, his energy. I thought was one of the few things that I'd be curious what your take. I mean, on TV, it seemed like Kevin Harlan was talking about how dead the building was, especially after the Giannis injury. Um, and you could feel that on TV. Fiserv is not known for being a consistently great gym in terms of energy. Like the crowd probably lets itself kind of get taken out of games, especially when the Bucks are down. And probably everybody was a bit shell shocked with the Giannis situation. But it seemed like Bobby Portis was like, the only thing that was able to inspire some life with his energy. And again, some of that was on the defensive end, which we're not used to seeing as much. Took a charge, made some plays on that end. And then I think offensively, again, kind of what we're used to seeing. I think, as the game went on, he missed a bunch of threes short. Felt like the 3-point shot, unfortunately, which has been coming around, was not there. But the way that he's able to take smaller defenders, and the Heat have a bunch of guys. Dwight Portis is going to be defended by a lot of guys who are small, and certainly mostly guys that are smaller than him. I mean, unless Bam is defending him, he's pretty much always going to have a guy that he can take down into the post. And pretty much whenever that happened, it looked like he was comfortable getting to that left shoulder little push shot, hook shot. And so they're gonna need that. Hopefully not because Giannis is out the rest of the series, but they're going to need him to do that to continue to be that sort of offensive spark plug. Especially, if we didn't see, I don't know how much zone we actually saw from the Heat today. They play more zone than any team in the league. Certainly, Bobby is, I think, one of those guys that can be a bit of a zone buster with his kind of mid-range game and ability to work mismatches. So, kudos to Bobby, but Jay Crowder, playing only 11, 12 minutes. I probably, would attribute some of that to a couple of things. One, I mean, he hit, I think, an early shot, which looked like a 3, ended up being a foot on the line 2. I think the Bucks had like 3 of those
They
today.
had like 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Bobby and Drew also had like toe on the line 2s, unfortunately. And then finishes 1 for 5. You mentioned a couple of and ones. There was one moment, I think, in the third quarter where it was like a very obvious one-on-one matchup with him and Jimmy. And like Jimmy literally, like, I mean, it looked like Jay like was about to fall
Just
down, like just
yeah.
completely like misread the drive and looked really bad. So I mean, Jay is notoriously streaky offensively in his shooting. That has been certainly well documented over the past few years. So him having an up and down sort of 3-point series would not surprise anyone. But you're going to need him to make shots because you're going to need him to probably play more, especially if Giannis is in any way limited. So, yeah, I mean, for anyone thinking, Jay Crowder was just going to come in and, he's going to be like, the answer on Jimmy Butler, Jimmy, I mean, again, maybe that could have, I don't know, maybe that could have been better than Grayson Allen. Grayson really struggled in the first half, came alive a bit in the second half. I was pretty disappointed in the way he defended Hero before Hero got hurt, but yeah, Jay Crowder, we're still trying to figure out exactly how he's going to fit into all this. But I'm a longtime Wes Matthews fan, so I'm always happy to see Wes stepping up. He hit a couple threes, had a couple moments defensively. Not to say he was the answer
Great.
defensively or something like that,
Yeah.
but at a minimum, if you're not going to have Giannis for periods or next game, whatever it might be, you're going to have to probably stack more sturdy. And so I imagine you're going to need those guys, but definitely notable that we didn't see Jay. So if Giannis is out, I would expect Crowder's going to play a lot more. I would expect start just because that's been what they always do, is they always have Bobby start when Giannis is out, and Bobby generally performs well in that role. But they're going to have to rely a lot more heavily on Jay Crowder, especially with the small lineups that we saw work well for Miami.
And those lineups, as you mentioned, this is not the Heat team from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, especially in the bubble, where they just had a lot of those bigger wings and guys that could give Giannis fits. So at times, you do wonder, you're probably better off playing small against this group where it's just Bam Adebayo that is the only rim protector. And that's essentially the only big. Kevin Love is their small ball 5 that they can play, and that's what complicates it even more if Giannis And again, we don't know anything at the time of this recording, but if Giannis is going to miss any time beyond just game one in this series. Should remind you about Built Bar as well. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want the sugar or the calories, try Built Bar and get all the protein that you need. Built Bar is good because they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate, the healthy snack protein bar. Built Bar. Unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. Just don't try coconut. And better yet, you can get them at your local Sam's Club or Walmart. If you don't find the flavors that you love, try builtbar.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Sam's Club, Walmart today, and you can pick up $4 of Built Bar. All right, Frank. So we're in wait and see mode on Giannis, and again, it didn't seem like it was worst case scenario, but things can change when you do more scans and imaging. So we will certainly have our eyes peeled for the injury reports on Tuesday. We did mention Tyler Hero a bit, but I would assume Tyler Hero is out for the remainder of the series, given that the report from the Heat was a broken hand, and that's his shooting hand.
Yeah, sorry. Literally, I was just trading clips with Eric Name, who literally is cutting up Jay Crowder defensive clips. That's why I was just trying to get off mute. But yeah, I think I'm trying to remember where I heard it, but I believe the timeline on Hero was 4 to 6 weeks. I think I saw that reported post game. So yeah, certainly all indication is Hero is out for the remainder of the series. And so again, I mean, look, Hero is obviously not as essential to Miami as Giannis is for the Bucks, but certainly that does limit a Miami team offensively and makes them even more Jimmy Butler centric as far as shot creation goes. Because look, yes, you can plug in. Seems like Duncan Robinson is probably the guy now that is going to play certainly some. Maybe not. I don't know if he's going to play a ton. He did start
6 minutes. Yeah, 6 minutes today. And not to cut you off, but it was interesting. I know he hasn't been great, and he hasn't really been in the rotation lately. But with Tyler Hero going down, we did not see Victor Oladipo at all. And after the game, Victor Oladipo was running some sprints and going through some workouts and doing some shooting. So maybe it cracks the door open for him. But again, he's not the Victor Oladipo that most fans remember.
Yeah. And, you know, I think I was really curious. I kind of wondered, like, why wouldn't they just start Caleb Martin, given, the need to have like some size out there. Again, Caleb Martin's 6'5", 205 pounds. He's not big, but he's certainly, a better defender, a little bit sturdier than, the trio of Hero, Gabe Vincent, and Max Strus. So I kind of wonder, like, why not just put in Martin for Vincent? But so maybe Caleb Martin is the guy that comes in, or I mean Kyle Lowry, right? Like
Kyle Lowry, more Kyle Lowry minutes, yeah.
I mean it's wild that I saw him the other night, right? When he's almost single-handedly kept the Heat in that game that they lost to Atlanta, and tonight 19 minutes, 1 shot, 2 points, right? I mean, he basically was barely even out there. So will be interesting kind of what direction they go. But I mean, essentially only 8 guys played for Spo tonight. It was Love, Martin, and Lowry were the only guys that played of consequence off the bench, and then Duncan Robinson, as you said, played only 6 minutes. So so I don't know. But needless to say, the Bucks, I think, are, as Bud always says, they're going to be focused on themselves, as they always do. And there's probably a lot to focus on in terms of defense. One play that I just saw cut up when the Bucks got it to 43-42 and Miami takes a timeout. The next play, Jimmy was basically lurking like 30 feet from the hoop, and Jay Crowder's basically like flat-footed, not paying attention. They give Jimmy the ball. He basically is attacking as soon as he catches. Has a nice kind of reverse finish past Brook Lopez, but Jay was pretty much a pylon, like just observing that play. So again, they need a lot more from Jay Crowder, and it's one thing again to miss shots offensively. That's going to happen when you're kind of a streaky 3-point shooter, but defensively they need guys to stand to step up, especially if Giannis is going to be out. And you gave up 5 second-round picks for Jay Crowder. You didn't give up 5 second-round picks for him to play 11 minutes and really be a big negative. So So yeah, definitely a number of guys that we're going to keep our eyes on. But do we want to? I mean, do we want to talk a little bit more about the offense here, and maybe we can say something positive, which would probably mean we already talked a little bit about Bobby Portis, but maybe talk about Khris Middleton. Normally we're the types of people that like love to give Khris Middleton credit, and certainly he was one of the few bright spots tonight.
He was fantastic, and he early on when he was hitting the turnaround shots and getting to his spot and hitting those jumpers, that's when you get the feeling of, okay, this is a Khris Middleton game, and it appears he's back. It's still a work in progress on defense, and I think when we talked about the defense, you didn't put him in a position to succeed when he was having to be matched up on Jimmy Butler, but that's where you're still waiting to see some of the progress from Khris Middleton on the defensive side to get back to where he was prior to that knee injury. But offensively, he was fantastic. And I mentioned the Heat really did everything they could to keep the Bucks in this game with their turnovers and just the way that they played down the stretch to allow the Bucks to hang around. But a lot of times in this game, you looked at a lot of the numbers and thought, how are the Bucks within 8 points? Like the Heat should be up by 20 or more, and the reason was really the way that Khris Middleton was carrying that offense.
Yeah, I hit a couple of mid rangers early. I thought in the third quarter, when they kind of got back into it, um, his aggression in terms of trying to probe the defense and get to the basket, use some footwork, use the fact that again Miami typically is putting smaller guys on him. I thought was encouraging to see. There were a couple plays where I thought he was a little bit overly aggressive. 5 turnovers I thought was as typical like the a lot of times like his biggest problem over the past few months has been just being I think a little bit too aggressive. Some careless turnovers. But again, I mean, this. I mean, to kind of come through being the big question mark coming into this game, coming out the knee injury, and then to respond with 33 out of 20 shooting, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Only 1 foul, and was the only Buck starter with a positive differential in terms of plus minus. Again, it feels like a waste, right? Like you got this awesome game from Khris Middleton. Hopefully, it's an indicator that he's going to be sharp this series. I do think it was interesting, though. I mean, we didn't hear any indication that he is formally limited in terms of minutes coming into this game. But he only played 33 minutes in a game.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler played 43 minutes, right? Brook Lopez played 36. Drew Holiday played 35. Some of Drew's limitations because of the early foul trouble. But I think it'll be an interesting question. How long, how many minutes can he be pushed to? And especially in a scenario if Giannis is missing time, like being able to get 40 minutes from Khris is pretty important, being able to put him into the high 30s. And that's obviously something that he has not done at all this season. I think 34 was the highest number he's played, as I think Eric pointed out in his athletic piece the other day. And, I look back at the finals against Phoenix a couple years ago. I mean, he played 40 minutes every game, even the blowout win the Bucks had in game, was it 3 or 4? I can't remember if it was 3 or 4. He played 41 minutes in that game too, 41 to 45 every game. And so he's been, a workhorse for them. And it doesn't seem like minutes wise, he's quite there yet. And I think, Joe Ingles is important because I think Joe gives some of that, playmaking spark, some of that shooting spark with the second unit so that you can maybe paper over Khris's absence a bit more. But they're definitely going to need his offense. And as you said, I think obviously one question is just be defensively, especially with Giannis out. You're going to need all these other guys, whether it's Khris, Joe Ingles, all these other guys who are not, high end defenders, who are not, or Brook. They're going to have to be better because what we saw today. I mean, Miami will put pressure on you. They back cut, run a lot of dribble handoffs. And obviously with Jimmy, he's as crafty as they come. So yeah, good on Khris Middleton. People who like to blame Khris Middleton for stuff are going to have to park it for a couple days. But they're going to need him to continue to be maybe not quite this Khris Middleton rest of the series, but especially if Giannis is out, they're going to need something. They're going to need something close to it. And I think Drew Holiday, the playmaking was really good today. Defense was, I don't think this was by his extremely high standards, a great defensive game. I don't think they necessarily figured out how to best use Drew defensively against Jimmy. But I think the frustrating thing was, once again, Drew's playoff shooting again left a lot to be desired. 6 out of 18 tonight, 16 points on 18 shots, only 1 turnover, so that was good. But I quoted the stat the other day. I mean, I hate the stat, but he shot 47% true. He said 47% true shooting in the playoffs for the Bucks. That's terrible. Like, you got to be better. I mean, he's had some awesome games, and he does so much defensively. I think his playmaking has been really underrated, especially in the playoffs. But man, the shot making just comes and goes, and you just never know with Drew in the playoffs if it's going to be a good night or potentially an atrocious night. Today was, again, just and they, the way the defense was, they really needed more from him as a scorer. And, again, I feel like I've offered this caveat like 60 times in this podcast already, but if Giannis is out, then that just becomes a lot harder to stomach. So hopefully we get a bit more locked in from a perspective Drew Holiday next game. But definitely another kind of tale of two sides of the ball for Drew, or maybe not even tale of two sides of the ball, but just kind of uneven game overall from him. And I think his struggles, and then Brooke Lopez just not being involved, felt too much like the Boston series, where Brooke was just kind of an afterthought. I think he only took 4 shots that were inside the paint all game long, 4 for 4 on twos, 0 for 3 from 3. And all the good things we've seen from him as far as being a roll man, making himself available in the dunker spot, using kind of that mid-range touch to just sort of conjure up shots, or attack closeouts even. Just not enough of that in today's game. Played 36 minutes, -4. So for all the kind of interesting things that happened as far as the drop defense today, they didn't get killed or anything with Drew with Brooke on the floor. But again, it feels like they're going to need more from him offensively, and just 4 2-point shots, we know that they can do a lot better, especially given the way Joe Ingles and Khris and Drew are able to work with him.
Yeah, I would have expected a little more to feature Brooke, especially when this, Miami, give him credit because it wasn't one hot quarter, one hot half. I think they were 8 of 14 in the first half, 7 of 11 in the second half. So they sustained this for 48 minutes where they were shooting, and the Bucks did the same on the opposite end. So it wasn't just one bad quarter for the Bucks. And at that point, I would have thought we would have seen more Brooke touches in the paint and try to feature him a little bit more when they went on those runs. A couple of those sequences, a lob to Brooke Lopez from Drew Holiday, one of the slower developing lobs we've seen, where it seemed like it even caught Brooke off guard of, oh, you're really trying this here. And then that Brooke and one where he used his footwork. So if you don't have Giannis, you're going to have to feature that a lot more. But that feels like a good place to wrap this up. I think the takeaways here, I still expect the Bucks to win this series. Even if you don't have Giannis, there are things you can do to win this series. You're the 1 seed. You see why the Heat were one of those teams that when we were watching the play-in tournament, you felt like, all right, we'll beat the Miami Heat, but this isn't my preferred opponent. And when you watch tonight, this is the reason why. They have a very good coach. It's a smart team. It's a team that's been through these battles. And for whatever reason, the Bucks are the only team that figured out in one series how to slow down playoff Jimmy Butler. That wasn't the case tonight.
Yeah, there was no Bryn Forbes outscoring Jimmy Butler tonight. There was no Bryn Forbes equivalent.
Jimmy almost matched what he scored in that series 2 years ago tonight alone. I think it was 58 points, and tonight he had, 35?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and say he'll probably be by the end of game 2. But hopefully maybe they can stretch it to game 3. That would be a big plus and a major improvement for the Bucks. So let's leave it there. Let's let it marinate for a couple days, Justin. Nobody's happy. Hopefully, I think at this point, as we said, all we can hope for is some rapid healing from Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if that happens, then obviously you'll feel a lot better about the Bucks' chances of, again, showing their pedigree and why they had the best record in the league and why Miami did not. But again, it's man, to quote Zaza Pachulia, nothing easy, Justin, nothing easy.
That is a good place to end it. And also, Frank, I should point this out. This is the challenge light that we did see used once. It would have been nice to just use it for the start of the game altogether, where it's like you're playing somebody online of just gonna turn it off and restart this one. That's what
Yeah,
it felt
but
like.
by the way, we didn't even complain about the officials much, but Tyler Ford, Tony Brothers,
A
get out of here. Hopefully we don't
lot to
see.
be desired.
Hopefully
And
load them back into the clown car and send them on their way.
I'll leave this for you and Kane to discuss throughout the week. But 2 games today, and I know you can look at it and say, well, you're Bucks fans and Giannis left the game, so you're obviously you're clouded to feel this way. But 2 games today where we saw the defender trying to draw the charge, and it resulted in one player leaving the game for the remainder of the game, and Giannis and John Morant. Who knows with him with the wrist issue that he suffered late in the game? It's long overdue, Frank. Let's ban the charge.
Yeah, and Joel Embiid took a nasty fall a couple weeks ago as well. So it's tough. Again, hopefully, fingers crossed for Giannis. He's back soon. And again, all whatever it is now, maybe not 72 hours, but close to it before Wednesday's game. I'd say we're all happy to have every minute of that available, and hopefully Giannis will do Giannis things again very soon. But lots to clean up regardless of his status. And again, fingers crossed the Bucks clean up their act, and hopefully this is just another game 1 Bucks face plant and that they move on from it soon. So, all right. Onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards. Kane will be back with Frank to dissect and get you set for game number 2 Wednesday night. For Frank Madden, signing off. Better things for the Bucks after this.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
All righty.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.